The pillow is a heavy, down-filled ghost in Rachel's hands. She stands over the man who has spent a decade systematically erasing her, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of a chest that contains a heart she no longer recognizes. In the dim, blue-grey light of the master bedroom, Mark looks soft, almost innocent. But Rachel knows the geography of his lies too well. She knows that beneath that expensive duvet lies a stranger who has bartered her youth for the thrill of fresh skin and secret messages. The air in the room is thick with the scent of his betrayal, a faint, citrusy perfume that isn't hers, clinging to the fabric like a taunt. She grips the edges of the pillow until her knuckles ache, white as the porcelain of the bathroom sink she cried over an hour ago. For a fleeting, shimmering second, she imagines the silence that would follow the pressure. She imagines the stillness. Not a murder, she thinks, but a mercy. A quiet conclusion to a marriage that has become a long, slow-motion car crash. But the anger is too old for a sudden flash of violence. It is a cold, deep-sea creature, ancient and heavy. She exhales a breath that tastes like copper and bile, lowering the weapon. She is not a killer. She is simply a woman who has forgotten the sound of her own name when it isn't spoken as a reproach. She turns away, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of her retreat. Every step through the house feels like walking through a museum of her own failures. There is the armchair she bought when she still thought they would read to each other. There is the dining table where they sit in a silence so dense it has its own gravity. She has lost the vibrant, jazz-loving girl she used to be, pruned away by Mark's subtle, sharp-edged critiques until she was nothing but a domestic ghost, isolated and friendless, haunting her own hallways. The guest room door closes with a click that sounds like a bone snapping. She locks it, leaning her forehead against the wood. This is her sanctuary, the only space where the air doesn't belong to him. She wakes the laptop. The screen flares to life, a digital sun rising in the darkness of her isolation. Log in. The interface is a portal. On the other side is Julian. He is a name and a set of pixels, yet he feels more tangible than the husband snoring in the other wing of the house. To the world, he is a shadow. To Rachel, he is the only person left who talks to her like she's actually there. Julian, you're late tonight. I was starting to think you finally fell asleep, or he actually decided to talk to you for once. You okay? Her fingers hover over the keys. She is shaking, a fine, internal tremor that feels like a tectonic shift. Rachel, I just stood over him with a pillow. I didn't do it, obviously, but I held it there for a long time. I'm just so bitter, Julian. It's in my throat. I look at this house and I don't even see a home. I just see all the things I gave up for a man who doesn't even see me. I feel like I've disappeared. The response pulses on the screen, a heartbeat of light. Julian, Rachel, you haven't disappeared. He just stopped looking. There's a difference. Most people in your position would have lost their minds by now. The fact that you're still angry means you're still in there. Don't let the house win. You've got a suitcase and a car, and you know I'm waiting. It's not a movie, it's just a choice. You just have to make it. She leans back, a single hot tear carving a path through the dust on her cheek. The sadness is a vast, unmapped territory, but the anger is becoming a compass. She thinks of the friends she no longer calls, the hobbies she abandoned to make room for his ego, the way he thinned her life until it was a transparent thread. Julian's words are simple, but they are a lifeline. She knows deep down that she is trading one dependency for another, but the alternative is to drown in the subway-tiled silence of Mark's house. She closes her eyes and listens. Through the wall, she hears the distant rhythmic thud of the house settling, or perhaps it is the sound of the foundation finally giving way. She isn't a wife anymore. She is a secret. She is a slow-burning fuse. As she stares at the blue light of the screen, She realizes she didn't put the pillow down because of mercy. She just couldn't bear to be alone in the dark after the screen turned off. The office door is thick, but Mark hears the lock click. Rachel, safely tucked away in her sanctuary of glowing screens and curated resentment. He stays in the bedroom, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the adrenaline of another silent evening to drain from his joints. Mark built this. Every square inch of crown molding, every piece of designer furniture, the air she breathes, it was all bought with the currency of his youth. He spent a decade grinding in boardrooms, missing birthdays, alienating friends to ensure she never had to want for anything. He thought the house would be a vessel for a life, but it turned into a museum for their mutual disappointment. He knows she thinks she's the victim of his success. He watches her drink until her eyes are glassy, stumbling through rooms he paid for, looking at him like he's the one who stole her soul and the laptop. He isn't stupid. He sees her pouring her heart out to some digital ghost. He knows about the secret tabs and the phantom architect of her affection. He doesn't even mind. If that pixelated fantasy keeps her from shattering more wine glasses, he's happy to let her have him. His phone buzzes. Sarah. She's 24 and thinks his cynicism is a vibe. He flips the phone over, the light fading into dark. People call it betrayal, but here it's just a distraction, a localized anesthetic. Mark doesn't see the difference between her secret messages and his own empty weekend business trips. They are both trying to survive the vacuum of this marriage. He's had these transient shadows for years, keeping his mouth shut to preserve a brittle, artificial peace. These women are nothing. They are just carbon copies of a desperate need to feel something other than the cold, marble-tiled ache of his own home. He meets them in hotel rooms that smell of synthetic cleaner, in bars where lighting hides the graying roots of his ambition. They are temporary shelters against a hurricane of regret. He doesn't look at them when they sleep. He just wants to borrow their pulse to remember what human connection feels like without the crushing weight of a mortgage. He looks for her in all of them. He looks for the way Rachel used to tilt her head when she laughed in that drafty apartment, back when they had nothing but a shared dream of more. God, he misses her. He misses the girl who didn't know what a stock portfolio was. Before he gave her everything, the marble, the closets, the suffocating silence, she was a wildfire. She was loud, messy, and loved him with a terrifying, unpolished intensity. She used to walk through the door of their first home with mud on her boots and stories that didn't involve social standing. He remembers her curling against his back in that cramped bed, asking about his day because she actually cared. Now she looks at him as if he is an intruder, a man who bought his way into a tragedy. Every dollar was a brick in the wall separating them. He loathes the money. He looks around this mausoleum of wealth and feels sick. It is blood money, the price he paid for a version of her that no longer exists, a woman who traded her heart for a higher tax bracket and never stopped mourning the deal. He stares at the empty pillow. It's an indictment. He has had these affairs because he is starving, a man surrounded by gold, dying of thirst. He wants to go back to the 5 years before the money, before the expectations. He wants to be the guy who couldn't afford to take her out, the guy she looked at like he was the only person in the world. He would burn every cent he has, set this house on fire, just to see that spark in her eyes again, the one not directed at a screen or a bottle of gin. But the money is the trap. He has built a cage so exquisite she has forgotten how to be wild, and he has become the keeper, the provider of everything she wants, while losing the only thing he needed. He is tired of paying for her unhappiness. He is tired of the fleeting touch of strangers that only highlights how alone he is. He rolls onto his side. He's the one who kept the lights on. He stayed when the poetry turned into bitterness. Yet she's the one who stood over him tonight with unadulterated loathing. He felt the heat of her anger radiating like a fever. He knew she was holding something. He half hoped she'd just do it. It would be a more honest end than this slow rot. She makes the home a tomb. Every time he walks through the front door, the air pressure seems to drop. It's a miserable existence, two people playing a game of chicken where no one ever hits the brakes. He's bitter that the woman he sacrificed everything for has turned into a stranger who hates him for the very lifestyle she consumes. And he's bitter at himself for being the kind of man who needs a stranger's voice in his ear just to walk down his own hallway without screaming. He hears her typing in the other room, the rhythmic click-clack of her escape. It is a frantic, melodic code, a bridge built of binary that spans the chasm between their twin beds. He imagines her fingers moving, not against him, but against the glass, seeking a warmth that doesn't require the mess of shared history. His own phone vibrates, a low tectonic hum against the mahogany. "Where are you?" the screen asks. A ghost of a woman he saw in a hotel bar 3 states away, a woman whose name he almost forgets, asks for his presence again. He ignores it, or maybe he doesn't. It hardly matters. These tiny, flickering transgressions are just stitches in a wound that will never close. He thinks of the way he holds himself when he is away, a different posture for a different life, shedding the skin of a husband in rented rooms where he is allowed to be anonymous. He is a man made of glass, reflecting only what is placed before him, unable to hold onto his own image. He thinks about the way they used to be, the way they were once solid, a singular entity defined by touch and laughter. Now, they are 2 separate orbits, held in place by the gravity of a mortgage and a shared surname. He wonders if Rachel knows about his own ghosts, or if she is so blinded by her own neon blue salvation that she assumes his silence is simply a lack of imagination. He realizes with a cold, hollow ache that she doesn't care. She would be relieved if he found someone to take him off her hands, just as he would be relieved to see her find a destination for all that misplaced, desperate devotion. The house creaks, a settling of foundation that sounds like a long, drawn-out sigh. He closes his eyes and tries to remember what her laugh sounded like before it became a weapon. He can't. The memory is a fraying ribbon, slipping through his calloused fingers. All he can hear is the hum of the central air and the sound of his own shallow breathing in a house that's far too big for 2 ghosts. They are roommates in a mausoleum, curators of a wreckage, waiting for the morning to come so they can put on their masks and pretend, one more time, that the silence between them is just peace. The silence in the house is a pressurized thing, a heavy, suffocating gas that 14-year-old Lisa breathes in until her lungs feel coated in lead. From the top of the stairs, her eyes, withdrawn and aged by the labor of witnessing, track the wordless choreography of her parents. She sees her mother, Rachel, moving through the hallway like a ghost who hasn't quite realized it's dead yet. Lisa knows these steps by heart because she invented the rhythm. She had spent years trying to be the bridge, the soft intermediary between their jagged edges. When she was younger, she had realized that if she could just fill the space, if she could provide enough warmth, her mother wouldn't need to look for a way out. She had set herself up as the sun in their decaying orbit, trying to pull her mother away from the gravity of a home that felt like a cage, despite how hard her father tried to build it into a sanctuary. She hadn't meant for her to get so deep, but somewhere along the way, the need to be the cure, the need to be the person who offered the love that her father, in his desperate, wounded exhaustion, could no longer provide, had consumed her. Now, she is the secret gardener of her mother's salvation. On the 8th night, the deadbolt of the guest room clicks shut. Lisa sits in the dark of her own room, the air thick with the scent of stagnant hope. She waits, counting the heartbeats of the house, until she hears the telltale chime of her mother's laptop waking up downstairs. Lisa moves to her own desk, her touch light as a moth against the keys. She doesn't turn on the lamp. The only illumination is the cold, azure luminescence of her screen, which reflects in her pupils like trapped lightning. Her fingers hover for a moment, poised in the quiet air, before they begin to dance across the keys, a practiced, rhythmic cadence she has perfected over years of whispered digital devotion. She logs in. The interface is a familiar, comforting void. She's there. Lisa can feel the vibration of her mother's presence in the digital ether, a kinetic energy that hums through the fiber optics. She begins to type, the words flowing out of her with a chilling, fluid grace. She writes of freedom, of a life untethered from the heavy, suffocating expectations of the house, of a love that is pure because it is unburdened by the mess of reality. She writes with the confidence of someone who has studied her mother's soul under a microscope, anticipating every doubt, soothing every fear, before it even fully forms. She isn't just a daughter sitting in the dark anymore. She is the architect of the escape. She watches the cursor blink, a steady, hypnotic pulse, waiting for the return. When the message arrives, she reads it with a detached, maternal satisfaction. It is a surrender, a final shedding of the skin. Lisa leans back, her shadow stretching across the wall like something ancient, something that has been waiting for this moment since she was a child trying to mend the world with her own small hands. She is Julian, not by name, but by the very essence of the life she has curated. She is the shadow in the room, the voice in the ear, the light leading the way out. As she types her next response, her face is devoid of the confusion of a 14-year-old. It is the face of a weaver at her loom, pulling the threads of her mother's life into a tapestry that only she controls. The house settles, the floorboards groaning under the weight of the night, but inside the screen, there is only the humming, electric promise of departure. Julian smiles, a thin, razor-edged line, and hits send. The dorm room is quiet, a neutral space that feels neither like a cage nor a sanctuary, just a blank canvas waiting for a life that Lisa isn't sure she wants to inhabit. It is spacious enough to breathe, with light filtering in through blinds that she hasn't bothered to open since arriving. The air is still, lacking the oppressive heavy scent of the house she left behind, but it feels thin, as if she is waiting for the oxygen to run out. She had promised herself the silence of these 300 miles would be the end. When she packed her life into those boxes, she told herself she was leaving the role of Julian behind, discarding the digital mask like a shadow she no longer needed to carry. She had imagined a clean break. The moment she settled in here, her parents would become two people she knew, but no longer owned. They were on their own now. The burden of their happiness was no longer a weight she had to manage between chemistry labs and late-night study sessions. But the silence from the screen is louder than any argument she ever heard in the hallways of her childhood home. For days, she has lived in the vacuum of her own creation. She thought she could let Julian die, let the character fade into the static of the internet. But the notification from her mother pierced the quiet like a gunshot. I stood over him tonight. I held a pillow, and I thought about the end. Lisa feels the familiar, sickening lurch in her gut. She stares at the wall of her room, the space suddenly feeling hollow. She had intended to be the daughter who moved on, the girl who built a life that didn't involve mending the cracks in someone else's marriage. She had planned to be free, but she realizes with a dawning, quiet terror that she doesn't know how to exist without the buffer. The thought of breaking up with her mother, of letting the Julian persona vanish, feels like an amputation. If she stops, if Julian disappears, the void between her parents will be absolute. They will shatter, and she will be the one who left the broken pieces on the floor. Her fingers ache with the memory of the keys. She isn't just Julian. She is the only thing keeping them from the edge. She logs in. The interface is as familiar as a second home, the glow of the screen casting a pale, unnatural light over her face. She doesn't feel like a student with a bright future. She feels like a puppeteer whose strings have become fused to her own nerves. She begins to type, the words spilling out with a terrifying, practiced ease. It isn't a chore anymore. It is the only way she knows how to stabilize the world. Julian, I heard you. I'm still here. I know the dark is heavy, but you aren't alone. The offer stands. It will always stand. Don't do anything you can't take back. Not when I'm still waiting for you. Just breathe. I have you. She hits send, and the screen pulses, a digital heartbeat that synchronizes with her own. She watches the blinking cursor, a steady, rhythmic ticking of a clock that never stops. She realizes, with a clarity that feels like a weight settling into her marrow, that she isn't just managing their chaos from a distance, she is addicted to it. She is the one who keeps the pulse going. She is the one who ensures the rot never fully consumes them, because if it did, she would have nothing left to hold on to. She is the architect of a beautiful, endless cage, and she is the only one with the key. She wonders for a split second if there is a version of her life where she isn't whispering secrets into her mother's ear, where she isn't the ghost in the machine. But the screen glows, demanding more. She opens a new tab. She is Julian, and she has a marriage to manage. The foundation of the house, 300 miles away, groans under the weight of her next lie, and Lisa, in the quiet of her room, in the prison of her own making, starts to type.